Officials are saying the California church shooting was politically motivated, but not by American politics. Despite being a U.S. citizen, the shooter targeted Taiwanese parishioners over disputes between China and Taiwan. Here's the updates. Officials announced that the Orange County church shooting over the weekend was politically motivated. The suspect, 68-year-old David Wenwei Zhou, was reportedly upset about the relationship between Taiwan and his home country of China.
We do know that based on information we've collected, and I'm not going to go into the details of that evidence, was a politically motivated hate incident, a grievance that this individual had between himself and the Taiwanese community at large.
Sheriff's deputies booked Zhou into the Orange County Jail on 1 felony murder count and 5 felony counts of attempted murder. He is a Chinese-born U.S. citizen with experience as a security guard.
There's a lot of evidence that absolutely at this point in time indicates that the suspect had an absolute bias against the Taiwanese people, its country, as a Chinese or mainland national.
China's ruling Communist Party has long threatened forced reunification of the neighboring island country. Taiwan's democratically elected party has steered the nation further towards independence. As for Zhou, he is being held on a $1 million bond.
The suspect is eligible for life without the possibility of parole or death. The reason I was there is because at some point in time down the road, I will have to determine as a district attorney whether or not we will be seeking death.
The shooting occurred at 1:25 p.m. at the Geneva Presbyterian Church following a Taiwanese service. Zhou killed 52-year-old Dr. John Chung while he fought with the shooter. 5 others were injured.
Without the actions of Dr. Cheng, it is no doubt that there will be numerous additional victims in this crime.
Parishioners subdued Zhou after he sealed the doors with superglue and chains. They hogtied Zhou with an extension cord until law enforcement officers arrived to arrest him. Their actions potentially saved the lives of 40 other individuals. Another one of the governor's blueprint plans was a recommendation for eliminating the marijuana cultivation tax, but at the same time set a baseline for youth programs that depend on those funds.
In a proposal to the legislature for the upcoming budget year, Governor Gavin Newsom aims to reform cannabis taxes. The result would eliminate the marijuana cultivation tax, which is set at $161 on a pound of the plant buds. If approved, it would take effect on July 1st. To make up for the lost revenue, after 3 years, the state would raise the excise tax imposed on retail cannabis purchases to 19%, up from the current 15%. But a range of education, law enforcement, and other programs are funded by the cannabis tax money, a total of $670 million each year. Industry leaders warned Newsom in December that the state's cannabis industry was verging on collapse, needing immediate tax relief and retail expansion to stay afloat. Broad legal sales began in California in 2018, but the industry has been burdened by taxes that can approach 50% in some areas, by regulation and by competition from a flourishing illegal market, which is reportedly at least double the size of the legal market. While cannabis is legal in California, many communities have either banned it or not set up local licensing programs for markets to operate. The tax cut proposal is subject to review in the legislature, where it could be modified.
California officials have questioned the state's expensive investment for COVID-19 masks since 2020. Now, one lawmaker is seeking a second review.
California Assembly member Cody Petrie Norris is asking for a second hearing by lawmakers regarding the $600 million no-bid contract for COVID-19 masks. 2 years after the deal was made, a civil lawsuit revealed State Controller Betty Yee's involvement with the agreement. In a statement to the Epoch Times, Petrie Norris said, "From my experiences with the controller, this is very out of character, and it is concerning if the reports are accurate." A state assembly committee heard the issue in May 2020, after both Democratic and Republican lawmakers said the deal felt rushed and suspicious. Yee has been in office since 2015, and her job entitles her to overlook state spending and provide financial guidance to local governments. According to court documents, Yi was in contact with a startup medical supply company named Blue Flame. At the time, Blue Flame was only a few days old. A political consultant named John Thomas, who had no experience in the healthcare industry, started the company. The lawsuit alleges that Thomas had contacted Yi days after forming his business, asking her to reach out to Governor Gavin Newsom's office to purchase 100 million N95 masks. The state cut an advance check for the masks, payment that was wired to Blue Flame's bank, which is based in Virginia. However, the wire transfer was flagged as potentially fraudulent and refused. Petrie Norris said, "The bottom line is, the Blue Flame fiasco was a near miss for the state. This incident and others, where the state was scammed out of billions of taxpayer dollars, really drive home the importance of competitive bidding." The case against Yi is not the first instance of secretive purchases during the pandemic. Governor Gavin Newsom was denied twice, making also an allegedly secret $1 billion mask deal with a Chinese maker. The deal was passed at a lower price 2 months later.
The Board of Supervisors in San Diego County passed an ordinance that redefines the meaning of the word woman. The board passed the local ordinance by a 3-2 vote last week.
The Board of Supervisors in San Diego County passed an ordinance that redefines the meaning of the word woman. The board passed the local ordinance by a 3-2 vote last week. The ordinance is based on the United Nations Women's Bill of Rights, but adds a transgender and non-binary language to achieve full equality and equity. Rebecca Boyce, who spoke in support of the change, said trans individuals are disproportionately affected by trafficking because they are often rejected by family and community. She said, "People who have experienced homelessness, domestic violence, or child abuse are more vulnerable to being trafficked." Supporters argued that the intent of the ordinance was to implement an intersectional and inclusive view of gender equity. Opponents denounced the ordinance, saying it puts women's rights and safety in jeopardy. They said it directly infringes upon the rights of biological women in sports and puts them at risk in prison. One law enforcement officer told the board that biological men are currently being booked into women's jails in the county, but are held separately. But with the passage of the ordinance, they won't have a way to keep them separate. A Reverend Earl Clampett said, "It's dangerous. We talk a lot about being concerned about women's rights and protecting women, but that is actually doing the opposite." During the meeting, the board chairman ejected 2 opponents of the ordinance for going beyond their allotted speaking time.
The moon passed through the Earth's shadow, creating a lunar eclipse. The moon took on a dark red hue for those lucky enough to see it. Sunday evening's lunar eclipse was visible over much of the world. People in the Americas were treated to a full eclipse, while those in New Zealand and Eastern Europe saw a partial eclipse. Often dubbed the blood moon, the total or penumbral eclipse happens when the Earth passes directly between the moon and the sun. The moon turns red because the only sunlight reaching the moon passes through Earth's atmosphere. The more dust or clouds in Earth's atmosphere during the eclipse, the redder the moon will appear. Total lunar eclipses happen once every 2.5 years on average. Another lengthy total lunar eclipse will happen in November, with Africa and Europe getting a nice view again, but not the Americas. The following lunar eclipse isn't until 2025. With the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco Bay as a backdrop, a large group made colorful human-formed Chinese characters that made for some impressive aerial footage. NTD's Jason Blair has more.
Here in the Presidio of San Francisco, about 400 Falun Dafa practitioners are making a large group formation of Chinese characters for an aerial photograph. When seen from above, the color-coordinated group forms into 8 Chinese characters. The words say, "The Great Way spreading in the world for 30 years." The message refers to the practice of Falun Dafa, translated as the Great Way of the Law Wheel.
Especially today, we are celebrating the 30 years of these Falun Dafas been spreading out all over the world, and we are doing this character setting. I feel like really honored to be here.
World Falun Dafa Day is on May 13th and is celebrated by practitioners of the meditation discipline as the day when the practice was first introduced to the public. This year is the 30th anniversary, and the Bay Area celebration started in San Francisco on May 7th with a parade and continued on Saturday with a character formation.
Falun Dafa is a practice, it's a spiritual practice of the mind and the body. We follow 3 principles of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance. And there's also 5 very gentle exercises that we do on a daily basis, and a book we read called 转法轮.
It's a very high level of Qigong practice. They tell you the very easy way, a very effective way to improve health, also cultivate your kind of like a moral standard.
It's taught me to be more truthful with what I do and compassionate with others.
Tanya Alva, a practitioner from Katati, said the practice helped stop her migraines, back pain, as well as some ongoing issues she was having with her ears.
I had very bad ear infections, and I think I was going deaf. It felt like I was going deaf. And so I noticed that the left ear cleared up in 3 months, and then the right ear cleared up in 6 months.
I learned to be more patient with my siblings, and it really just made me a better person.
The practice was first introduced in China, where it spread very quickly by word of mouth until an estimated 100 million people were practicing. Then, in 1999, the ruling Communist Party banned the peaceful practice, beginning a large-scale persecution that continues to this day.
Practitioners like us in China who are being persecuted horrifically by the Chinese Communist Party.
Falun Dafa practitioners take part in events like these to spread awareness of the discipline and to tell people about the Chinese Communist Party's abuse of practitioners in China. Jason Blair, NTD News, San Francisco.